Ever wanted to know what buffalo wings are made of? Then let's take a speculative look at flying bisons. Hey everyone! Flying bisons are the loyal companions of the air nomads and of the Avatar himself, one of the most iconic creatures in the world of Avatar. The Avatar. With one of them, Appa, being an integral part of the first show. So taking a look at this big furball and reimagining it as a real living animal should be a lot of fun. Please like, hype and subscribe to help this video fly high. And now, without further ado, let's get started. The beauty and majesty of nature can oftentimes be easy to forget in our chaotic world. But once we take our eyes back to the natural world and take time to appreciate its wonders, what we see will never cease to amaze us. Like there, flying high in the sky, we can see the flying bisons, a species which, despite their name, is not directly related to real bisons, this name being merely a translation. They are, in fact, more closely related to yaks. But unlike them, these animals adapted to the world around them by constantly climbing up the slopes of these mountains, reaching ever greater heights in which the presence of predators decreased dramatically, increasing the survival rates of their young. While vegetation is still present in this area, it was much sparser and harder than that found in lower regions, and so the rumen of these animals increased in size, creating accessory chambers for this food to be processed and fermented, reducing the digestion times this food source required. As the ancestors of genus Aerobison lived at higher altitudes than most similar artiodactyls, they present unique adaptations to this extreme habitat. Their noses, for instance, can be closed off at will, protecting their sensitive membranes from the biting cold and strong winds, and their toes are spread out, convergently similar to those of oreodonts or modern camels, allowing them to better grip the terrain as they climb the mountains they inhabit. Their fascinating respiratory system is another point of interest, as their lungs were much larger and densely alveolated than those of lower altitude relatives, helping these bison extract oxygen from the rarefied air of the altitudes they lived in. In time, these lungs would even develop large accessory chambers that increased their oxygen extracting surface, while also acting as resonating chambers that allowed the bison to produce incredibly loud calls, perfect for communicating and finding one another in the low visibility of their habitat. And while the heavy fur of the adults was enough to help them withstand the cold, calves would have a much harder time facing the elements, and so the tails of the adults evolved to be much wider, creating a surface that could be used to protect the calves from the cold while nursing and resting. As all organisms do, these bison kept adapting to their environment, and they ended up specializing further, going from living in the bases of mountains, to its slopes, to its peaks, and then to the only remaining place they had yet to go, above the mountain peaks. Vegetation in the slopes was much sparser and harder, but above it soared plants that thrived on the atmospheric ecosystems where sky wolves dwell, being held aloft by bladders filled with gases produced through their metabolism, while other gigantic plants grew from the mountain tops themselves, large stalks that formed entire canopies among the clouds. As it would turn out, getting from the peaks to the skies above and to this greater source of nourishment would need little more than a push. The much larger rumen chambers began accumulating gases produced by the digestive process, and these lighter than air gases would give the ancestors of flying bisons a good degree of buoyancy, allowing them to jump long distances between the rocky outcrops of their habitat. This process was refined generation after generation, and soon these bisons were capable of soaring between the peaks, rarely needing to stop to rest. Once they developed into soaring animals, many adaptations that had been of great use for living at higher altitudes further developed as adaptations to flight. The capacity to close their nostrils was still useful to protect their mucous membranes, but now also stopped bugs and debris from entering their nose as they flew, and the accessory lung chambers gave the buoyancy of flying bisons a boost. As they kept evolving, the rumen of the bisons developed further into two large sacs held at the sides of the body, giving them greater buoyancy and a lot of stability, acting very similar to those of the flying reindeer. These lateral sacs have, on occasion, been confused with a third set of legs. Modern flying bisons can be seen floating lazily among the clouds, feeding on the floating vegetation of this new environment at their leisure. Their lips, convergent with those of manatees, have a great degree of independent movement, aiding in holding this free-floating food source as they soar. Whenever they need to return to the ground, these animals are able to do so by exhaling to empty their lung chambers and by burping, which would empty their digestive flotation sacs, requiring that they feed before being able to fly again. This seemingly peaceful lifestyle is, however, but an illusion, as the aerial ecosystem is full of potential predators, and the flying bison is very well equipped to deal with them. Upon the first sign of danger, the bisons will instantly zoom away, using their paddled, muscular tail to produce a lot of thrust. Their flotation sacs also serve to give them a very streamlined silhouette, improving their airspeed as they fly. If escaping is not an option, the bisons will then roar as a threat display, and ram potential predators with all their might. Their horns, you'll notice, are still retained, and they are very effective at goring anything that gets in their way. Fortunately, not all organisms that share the bison's space are hostile to them, and one of the greatest examples of this can be found among our own kind. Many groups of Tibetan monks, found rather close to the point of origin of these animals, have been known to establish relations with entire populations of flying bisons, never quite domesticating them, but simply taming them and using them for transportation. Other closely related species, such as the Mesopotamian Lamasu or winged bull, have been treated with similar reverence, with the few species that have made their way further north being the origin of legends about the devil's herd running through the skies. And that's it for Speculative Biology look into flying bisons, with a special thank you to Alec Foisey for commissioning it and giving me some good stuff to use as its basis. Now, the basic idea behind the episode was pretty simple, grabbing a large bovid and making it fly. And as we've done that in the past on the channel, the basic idea behind the nature of these adaptations was easy enough to figure out. The fun part, then, was explaining the evolutionary history and tendencies that would lead to this, giving the bisons a reason to constantly gain altitude until finally reaching the atmospheric ecosystems that we have yet to bring to the channel. Design-wise, turning a yak-like animal into APA was relatively simple, but it did require the animal wasn't too heavy in order to be able to fly, so its bulk couldn't be made up of muscle or fat. Instead, we had to adjust the amount of flotation sacs to help give it its final look. Other parts of its anatomy and behavior, like the tail and lips, were more based on manatees, since the original version of flying bisons was directly based on this as well. So I hope you guys enjoyed this look at flying bisons, and please let me know if there are any other creatures from the show that you'd like me to reimagine. Here's, of course, a big thank you to everyone who wanted to see this episode, and big thanks as well to all of our researchers and research associates who support us through Patreon and YouTube memberships, and once again, to Alec for commissioning this episode. If you too would like to support the channel and you can spare a couple bucks, you can join in too. It would be greatly appreciated, and you get some nice extras like seeing all of our creatures and videos ahead of time and helping mold them into shape. Or you can also like, subscribe, or write a comment telling me any type of creature you would like me to give the Specubo treatment in the show. Any of those really help the channel a lot. Thank you all for watching, and see you next time on the Speculative Wildlife Research Center.